we're experiencing, what we're seeing in the animal kingdom, you might say, or what have you, is, these are gradual wake-ups, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And we use these bodies, we go through a lot of bodies, till eventually we come to the point where we do wake up. So now we're at that point, and like I said earlier, how Paul created the foundation, well, that was just step one. Many people think that was the ultimate, but it was not even close. Now, Paul hinted at the isness, as Rebazar gave him the rod of power in 1965. He hinted at the isness in his books, but again, it was far too much for most people to understand, and others were given the opportunity to present this to the world, but they didn't. They became self-absorbed, and this is where things are today. So this is why I created the new presentation, because this time I was shown to present the is to the world, because we're in such a, we're kind of in a do or die situation. In other words, it's time to wake up or you don't. And again, most people carry a lot of arrogance and are self-convinced know-it-alls because they've gone through so much of the system here that has been created out of nothing, so they think they've learned something. Until they have a realistic view from their real awareness, they really haven't. And the awakening that's taken place and the enlightenment and all these things that are marketed by these so-called spiritual paths and whatever, they're 1 and 2 dimensional. They're basically physical, astral. They talk about the aliens coming down, saving the earth. They talk about their saviors and the light coming into the earth, etc. This is physical, astral. And they think this is the ultimate. Again, most of these people are going off of traditional or ancient teachings, which many of them were set up by the reptilians or the controllers on the earth. Just like the gods of man, they marketed people into believing all these things. There are really no gods. Sorry to disappoint the public, but there actually are not gods, as people think. That, again, you read their doctrines. It's full of restrictions. If you like restrictions and want to continue into them, that is your right to do so. Everybody can decide whatever they want in life. It's kind of like eating ice cream when you know you'll get, if you eat too much, you'll get diabetes because of the information we have today. But you keep eating it because you like it. So you have that free will to do that. Eat ice cream, drink soda pop, eat candy bars. That's your main diet. The end result is you'll get diabetes, and when you do, you shouldn't be surprised, but many people are surprised. It's like, well, why did this happen to me, or did God do it, or whatever? No, none of those things. You did it to yourself. And fortunately, you do have the information how to, that this was coming up, and that you do have ways to fix it if you decide to go that route, because of the information we have today too, which is all very good. So we have a lot of things that people have become aware of that do provide a benefit, but at the same time, not everybody takes advantage of it, and that's why we're here as worldwide educators to provide this. So we have many areas that we cover, and so as we're out there having our adventure, it would seem like we're bothering the public, but actually we're providing warnings and benefits to the public, which are really a lot of fun. As you become more aware, yes, now you have the task to deal with what you do, but at the same time, you have the awareness to be able to better handle your own situation, because we're all in life, and this is part of it. Again, we're in a place in life on the earth. This is a place in life. This is not the whole of life. The whole of life is bigger, and it's not up in the sky. Okay, when you're looking in the sky, especially the daytime, that thing we call the sky is really not a sky at all. It is atmosphere. You're seeing atmosphere, and at night it's proven you see blackness and stars if you don't have too much city lights, but when you don't, you see the stars. You don't see the atmosphere, you see, but when the sun reflects in the daytime, it creates this appearance of an atmosphere, kind of like a swimming pool that's plastered, kind of an off-white, but when the water's in there, it looks like it's blue water. Well, it's because of the sunlight etc., and the lighting effects that create this coloration. And so it gives the appearance of a particular, but it is not so. So what we call the sky here is not a real sky. The real skies are in the real universes because they're endless, they're pure, they're real, there's no defects, it's not just atmosphere. In the real universes, you don't need to breathe. It's all about your real awareness. You are an absolute free being of real light, and that's on the 7th level. Each one of us already is this, but it is up to each one of us to take on the task and the journey to become more aware and wake up. And this is a part we have to do. Life cannot do this. We are in life, and just like the sun shining, we decide, our position. And so the sun is an awesome example of what life is. But again, from the physical view, it looks like a thing up in the sky. That's all giving us light. But it's actually more than that once you learn to see what it is, okay? And so we have our life on Earth, and it is important. It should not be taken for granted because it's very important to be here, and especially at this time for those that are fortunate enough to even recognize a little bit of what we're presenting. And there are many people across the world, and this world and many other worlds, that are having experiences with the real universal guides because they will come to them and provide an opportunity for them to wake up a step at a time. We make it a little easier because we have a lot of information that people are looking for. We have a lot of knowledge that we're sharing to where most of the world doesn't have it. And so at first, it seems a little funny, and it's almost like learning a new language. But once the individual becomes familiar, then they see what we're doing. And what we've created is the real connection here to the real connection. In other words, the real connection to the real universes is the new sound, the new you. And with the books and the writings, these are references. They're not sacred writings, they're not spiritual, they're not any of these things. They're simply a sharing of real experiences to provide a connection to the real connection with the experiences that the individual is having, to more so and eventually better recognize the all is. Now, not everyone is going to be able to do this because it is a huge journey. But those that are, very focused, motivated, and adamant to do so, they will. They will eventually recognize this reality. So there is no real definition that can be placed upon the all is. This is when people try to do this, are really thinking in the terms of the gods of man that are very well defined to where they're actually controlled by people and they're really being controlled even though they think they're in control. And it's gotten into such a primitive and medieval stage of worshiping and prayer, and that those that do worshiping and prayer, etc., this all originates from sacrificial voodoo religion. It's very, very real. And the reptilians created all of this for people to bow and kneel and pray and beg to their gods, who are manipulating them and control the human farming on the earth. So if that makes sense, you have the right to continue to do it. So our position is, and our focus is on the all is, with real guidance from the real universal guides. And so again, it's a choice people make, and for the most part, most people do not have the experience that there is more than just creation. Okay, do we have another question here?
Yes. In terms of, again, kind of an extension of the time question, can you discuss the Yugas and their purpose, and do they somehow affect the real side or vice versa?
Okay, basically in creation, we have what Paul termed as the 4 yugas, so we'll just go off of that. It's just easier instead of me inventing new terminology. These are basically like the 4 seasons that we have, They're basically chunks of experience, okay? Now, the time has been added to these things, but these are like chunks of experiences or lifetimes that we go through, and there can be approximately so many lifetimes. It's kind of like going to school. It's just like going to school. We go through the first, second, third, fourth grade, whatever, and within those grades, we have a certain amount of, we'll use the idea of time, we have a certain amount of time to proceed through that and to go through whatever it is we're going to learn in those chunk of experiences or that time factor. So when you're in the fourth grade and eventually you start to get to the fifth grade, so you've got to keep up with what's going on. And the same thing in the yugas. We have the yugas are broken down basically into lifetimes, and they give each one of us a position to go by. It's like, okay, well, I went through this first yuga, now I'm going through the second one. But this is not on a conscious, personal level. The personal part that we create as the vehicle is not conscious of this. Our real awareness is, but then again, we have to become conscious of our real awareness to be able to see this. Sounds a little complicated, but this is how it works. And so we create this false self that goes through these yugas because we want to gain experience. And so the yugas themselves, again, they're basically made up of lifetimes. It can be 10,000, 100,000, whatever. It just depends upon how the yuga is set up. And there have been, you might say, endless positions of creation to where the yugas have been set up. There's not just 4 yugas and that's it. There have been yugas upon yugas upon yugas, and we have other dimensionals that intertwine with this. So you have a lot going on because this is just how life is. As we decide something, it goes out into many unseen universes, back and forth, etc., that we don't even see. We just see the physical side. We just look for something physical. But they're going into many unseen. And the yugas themselves basically start off, there's 4 basic ones. It's the golden, it's the silver, it's the bronze, and now we're into the iron age, which is the hardest and the worst. As we back up a little bit here and we go into the golden age, this is when we first came into the yugas, and for the most part, those souls that didn't come from other yugas, okay, because you're processing, many people don't make it through the yugas. They don't wake up, so they have to continually go into the next yuga cycles, which is many more lifetimes. And so, for the most part, we come into the first yugas, everything is great. We'll use the Earth as an example. The environment, the air, the atmosphere, the planet has become mature to where, it's pristine. And there's trees, there's environment, there's fruit trees, there's food, there's this and that. Whatever we need is basically there. Okay, the water, everything is great. Then all we have to do is just, maybe take some of the trees and, figure out how to create some shelter or something for ourselves. But for the most part, the environment is almost as perfect as it can get. So this is the golden age. But as people start to, because they have 4 other bodies, they have an emotional body, they have memory bodies, and which reflect accordingly, consciously or unconsciously. And you have your mind body, and then you have the imagination, of course, which is actually part of the real awareness as it reflects in the vehicle. So again, it's like you getting into the car, you kind of imagine where you want to go with the car, but you use the car as the vehicle to get there. So again, you're the one with the awareness driving the car. And so the same thing, as we go through these yugas, we start creating ideas, we start creating situations, and as we do that, it can be a perfect situation. It's like 2 people being married, and in the beginning, oh, they're just, they're just so happy. Everything seems so perfect. And we see this scene in the movies all the time. Movies are great objective view of what we're already experiencing. But of course, when we see the movies, we're in La La Land. We're thinking, oh, this is in the movies. It's not in our so-called real life here. Okay. And so, it can be or whatever, and we say this to each other, oh, this is the perfect situation, we're going to have a wonderful life, and etc. But as time goes on, that little moment in time and space, it can be 10, 15 minutes, it's different with everybody, or it can last for years, etc. And you go back and forth with different attitudes, whatever. Eventually, for the most part, it crumbles, okay? And so this is what happens in the golden age, because ideas are compiled upon ideas. A consciousness is formed with certain communities and people, and then eventually it spreads around the world, just like what we have today. You have a certain basic idea that is spread upon this planet, and it's a technical business. It's a technical mind-controlling business is what is taking place on the world. And for the most part, this is agreed to. And so the world suffocates itself. It's actually suffocating itself. But anyhow, so we're in the golden age, and then it's kind of like a journey. You're on a journey, and eventually you start to cross the line, you might say, and things start to shift a little bit, okay? All of a sudden the grass doesn't look as green, the sky is not quite as clear, but it still looks good. Okay, it all still looks good, etc. And so as we proceed into this, at first we notice it, but then after a while we don't notice it. It just becomes a standard. Well, this is how it is. And then as we're born into each lifetime, we experience it as it is, just like those people that are born now. We've come into this lifetime, we see how the life is, we think, oh, gee, this is how life is. But we don't remember how it was. And so as we go through these yugas, or these different ages, all right, however it's termed, for many, many lifetimes, more things are created. And eventually we reach the next age, which becomes, again, we see this, and then there are many mini cycles within this too. And we see this, like I use the last couple hundred years as an example, when we had the cowboy and Indian days, that's an easy way to refer to it, until now, which is just a couple hundred years. We're not even talking about yugas here, which take up to hundreds of thousands of years or lifetimes. It just depends upon the individuals. Things are just set into motion. It's like in a classroom where kids are, each child is given a block of clay. And it's like, okay, here, kids, all right, we're going to make something here. Who has an idea? See, everybody's going to make their block of clay different. Of course, it's all going to come out different. But what is created individually and then collectively, okay, has an influence, doesn't it, in some particular way. So each person creates what they do, but then the whole classroom gets together and demonstrates, etc. Then they go out there and maybe they'll have a little event or something in the school auditorium, and all the classrooms bring in their clay creations, and everybody sees it, and maybe it's parent night and they see it too. So all of a sudden you have all these thought forms, this agreement, etc. You see how it expands upon itself. One thing becomes another thing, and for the most part, most people are agreeing to what they see and feel, okay, in this one-dimensional area, because you have the five senses. So this is basically the idea of this environment here. So as people go through the ages, this is how they're basically going through the ages, and that it is basically with the five senses. And there are those that pay attention a little better, and they use their intuition and other faculties a little bit better. But at the same time, for the most part, until they're aware of it and having the true knowledge and real guidance, for the most part, They're just simply rotating themselves in creation. So it's best that that we all go through the cycles, kind of like high school or whatever, for the most part, to learn to read and write, just to learn the basics. That's what we're here to do. Some people go through it faster than others. Some people don't finish it at all, simply because, well, they've learned it and they want to go out on their own. So again, it provides an opportunity, and this is what the Yugas do. They provide an opportunity for us to have certain experiences, and some will go faster, or some will get out sooner than others, or some will take longer. And so these 4 Yugas, and so this is where we have, just like school, we have gone through this process for lifetimes, and now we're into the Iron Age. We're into to where things are, to where the earth is depleted, ruined. The attitudes have been collected over, thousands of lifetimes, in the accumulated action of what has taken place of cause and effect shows up. It is showing up everywhere. And it's, for the most part, it's not good. All right, I'll use that idea, good and bad. It's not good. And that is, people are still not seeing, many people are still not seeing what they're doing in creation. They're just simply doing it. They're simply agreeing to the systems that are controlling them. And as we've went through these yugas and these ages, at certain points, there are certain individuals that start setting up, and they start to become aware of how they can manipulate the situation and have things, you might say, instead of for everybody, according to themselves and what they want. Maybe there becomes a scarcity of something, so all of a sudden they see, well, they want to control the situation, so they make sure they have enough, and they don't really care about others. But at the same time, there's also a game going on. People play games to where they like to control and manipulate others. This is where the individual becomes, more aware